It is being called a scandal and a cover-up. Tonight, calls for an investigation into the Maryland State Department of Education.
As Project Baltimore's Chris Papst explains, this comes after the agency changed the way it reports state test scores, hiding certain results from the public.
You actually seem a little irritated by this.
I'm irate.
Sean Kennedy with the Maryland Public Policy Institute is a government watchdog.
That data is utterly useless. They made it completely useless, and they did it on purpose.
And he is simply stunned by what the Maryland State Department of Education recently did.
Instead of coming clean and saying that they failed the students of Baltimore City and students across the state, they're trying to hide it. And now they're piling lies on why they're hiding it.
Here's what happened. In January, the state uploaded this spreadsheet to its website containing detailed state test results from last school year. Project Baltimore downloaded the spreadsheet and began analyzing the data. Fox 45 was first to report the results on social media in late January. Soon after, MSDE removed the data from its website. But remember, Project Baltimore already had it. And on February 6th,
my immediate reaction is take your kids out of these schools.
We published this devastating report. 23 Baltimore City schools with 0 students among those tested who scored proficient in math.
0 students are proficient.
The story went viral.
Not a single student was able to do grade level math, not a single one.
The data remained off the state's website for weeks. It wasn't until mid-March that the spreadsheet was reposted. But this time, much of the data was gone. Here's an example. These are the scores for Collington Square Elementary Middle in Baltimore City. This is one of the 23 schools that had 0 students who tested proficient in math. Here is how the data originally appeared on the state's website. We can see the number of students who took the test and the percentage of students who scored proficient or not proficient in each level. Now compare that to the new version. Here, most of the data has been replaced with asterisks. We can no longer see how many students at Collington Square scored proficient in math. The state has hidden the data from the public.
This is nothing but a cover-up. It's a cover-up with statistics. They're hiding what happened from the public on purpose, and they're only doing it because they got caught.
But it's not just Collington Square. We can no longer see certain results at many schools throughout the state. Maryland State Superintendent Mohammed Chaudhry declined an interview with Fox 45 to discuss why the test score spreadsheet was taken down and modified. Instead, we received a statement explaining that the original spreadsheet was prematurely posted by MSDE's web vendor and removed from the website because the data was still undergoing the federally required data disclosure methods for student privacy. According to MSDE, those methods include replacing the data with an asterisk if there's fewer than 10 students in a sample. But that is not the case at Collington Square. In the original spreadsheet from January, we can see how many students took the math test: 19 in 3rd grade, 18 in 4th, and 23 in 5th. Now, look at the revised data. The number of students has been replaced with an asterisk, even though each grade had more than 10 students.
The fact that the state education department is instituting a cover-up of what's going on in public schools is that outrage. It's absolutely disturbing.
But that's not the only change the state made. 78.9% and 21.1% of students at Collington Square scored in level 1 or level 2 for math, the lowest levels. Those scores were also replaced with an asterisk, even though MSDE's own guidelines say that should only happen if the percentage is less than 5 or more than 95%. According to MSDE's own statement, this data does not violate student privacy and should be visible to the public.
That's the definition of a cover-up. To avoid getting caught doing something wrong, in this case, failing the students of Baltimore City and students across the state, they're hiding information from the public.
MSDE's statement to Project Baltimore left us with more questions than answers.
And the fact that they would try to hide the ball is a scandal. People should lose their jobs. There needs to be an independent investigation.
I'm Chris Pabst, and this is Project Baltimore.
Busing for not just our bus zone.
Project Baltimore went to this Maryland Board of Education meeting to speak with State Superintendent Mohammed Chaudhry about state test scores taken down after we began reporting the results.
Mr. Chaudhry, Chris Pabst with Fox 45. Can we ask you a couple questions about your department removing test scores from the website?
Instead, he shut the door and locked it.
Your statement said that you value the media and you want to talk to the media. Sir?
After Chaudhry dodged our questions,
President Crawford?
Yes, I'd like to say something.
we turned to the board president, Clarence Crawford.
For one, we appreciate you coming. We appreciate the coverage.
But when we started asking Crawford questions, it appeared he knew very little about what was happening.
Did you know
What
the data
data?
was going to be adjusted?
No, because that's part of its operation.
You're the president of the school board.
That
You
is
didn't know?
That is operations.
It is being called a scandal and a cover-up.
It's now been over a week since Project Baltimore broke the news. The Maryland State Department of Education changed how it reports test scores to the public, hiding much of the data behind asterisks and making it more difficult for parents and taxpayers to see how schools are performing. The data was originally posted online in January, then removed. A redacted version was reposted after Project Baltimore reported on 23 Baltimore City schools with 0 students who tested proficient in math. The decision triggered a strong reaction, many calling on the state superintendent to address it.
Hold a press conference.
That's it.
Hold a press
Come
conference.
on the air.
Go do an interview.
You came on with us, Mohammed Chaudhry, when you first got here. Haven't been on since. Come on, what's there to hide?
MSDE has not agreed to an interview, but said in a statement it's using enhanced de-identification to protect student privacy because of learning challenges presented by the COVID-19 pandemic. But not everyone is buying that argument. The Maryland Public Policy Institute called it a cover-up, and earlier this week sent this letter to the Inspector General for Education requesting an investigation into whether any state or federal laws have been violated. Also, a petition calling on the state superintendent to resign is now nearing its goal of 2,500 signatures on change.org. 8 Maryland delegates have also signed multiple letters calling on MSDE to further explain why the data was removed from the state's website.
I had no idea that was what happened, and it's dishonest. It's hiding the ball. It's hiding the truth from parents.
Do you approve of the change?
From what I understand, yes.
You believe in giving less information to parents and taxpayers?
No, we believe in giving proper information. So what they did was
the past
correct.
13 years, you've been reporting this data the
I have
same
not
way. You're saying that MSD has been improper for the past 13 years? This is how they've been reporting the data for 13 years, sir. They just changed last month.
We stand with the superintendent.
Last week, Superintendent Chaudhry's office issued this 3-page letter concerning our reporting. At least 6 times, this letter said changing the data was federally required. But the U.S. Department of Education's website offers guidelines, not mandates, for protecting student privacy and says these decisions are left up to the individual state. So we asked Crawford about that.
We have our position. You have our position in writing. So again, we encourage you to continue to report. We're happy to have you report.
We then asked why the data was only redacted for the state's lowest performing schools.
If your argument is student privacy, doesn't the privacy of the highest performing schools matter too?
We are, again, I'm going to refer you to the document from the superintendent.
It doesn't answer any of these questions, and we've asked them.
Okay.
It doesn't answer any of them.
Transformative education for the children in the state of Maryland. That is our priority. That's what we're all about, and we invite you to come and to see what we're doing and to share the information. And again, thank you
but
very much.
But you're not sharing information, sir. You're hiding information. That's the reason we're here.
he's using it for nothing good.
This person is a former high-level employee at the Maryland State Department of Education. Fearing retaliation, we agreed to conceal their identity.
It doesn't make sense. It seems like you're hiding something.
This whistleblower, who worked under State Superintendent Mohammed Chaudhry, is reacting to something we just told them about their former boss. They didn't know. As an MSDE employee, were you made aware that the superintendent had this second email?
No.
Project Baltimore first reported on this email thread last week. We received it through a public records request. The subject line reads, Project Baltimore request. All the emails in this thread were sent on March 3rd in response to an email we sent MSDE concerning our investigation that found 23 city schools where 0 students tested in 2022 scored proficient in math. When we first received this thread, the final email was fully redacted, including the superintendent's email, which isn't redacted elsewhere in the thread. But we believe the public has a right to know what its government is doing to educate children, especially at Maryland's lowest performing schools. So we replied to MSDE, asking for the specific state law that allows for these redactions. A few days later, the state responded by unredacting parts of this email. And what we can see now is raising a lot of questions. On the state's website, this is the state superintendent's only visible email address, mohammed.chaudhry@maryland.gov. But this is not the address the state superintendent used to send this email. Once the state removed the redactions, we can see he sent it from mohammed.chaudhry725@maryland.gov. But that's not all we can see. The state also removed the redactions for 3 of the 4 recipients of this email. These 3 people work for MSDE. But what about this person? Why is this email still redacted? Why is the state superintendent using a secondary email address to send messages to people that the public can't see? And most importantly, why was all of this redacted in the first place?
I believe they don't want you or the public to know that Mr. Chaudhry has a different email address that he could be conducting official MSDE business through. It doesn't look good. It makes it look bad.
The state told Fox 45 in a series of statements the superintendent's secondary email address at first was inadvertently redacted, but he used it as a means of organization because his primary email address receives a myriad of messages from stakeholders every day. As far as the body of the email being blacked out, the state is still citing what's called the deliberative process privilege, which means if the superintendent is discussing strategy with fellow employees, that can be redacted. But that exemption may not apply depending on who the 4th recipient is. In this statement, MSDE said the 4th recipient is legal counsel and therefore is subject to redaction. But attorney Scott Martyr says that's not true.
There's nothing in Maryland law, including in the Public Information Act, that allows them to do that.
So you think MSDE is just wrong?
I think they're wrong. I think they're violating Maryland law by not giving you all of the names of the recipients.
Superintendent Chaudhry's contract expires next year. The State Board of Education has not yet offered him a new contract, even though Chaudhry has said he wants to stay.
It's really important to get this right for the families and the children of Maryland.
The next board meeting is August 22nd. And this whistleblower is asking the board to not vote on Chaudhry's future until the public, taxpayers, parents, and students have answers.
I do not believe that this is the person that should be leading our state into the future.
Tonight, we are learning more about the 98 text messages deleted from the state superintendent of schools' cell phone. And as Project Baltimore's Chris Papps explains, it's leading some to say Mohammed Chaudhry should consider resigning.
Most people would take a look at this circumstance and say it's a cover-up.
Adam Andrzejewski is the founder of OpenTheBooks.com, a nonpartisan government watchdog group that last year filed 50,000 public records requests across all 50 states concerning how your tax dollars are spent.
This is a failure of leadership.
Andrzejewski is a public records expert.
Yes.
But he has never seen anything like this. 98 text messages, each one deleted from the taxpayer-funded cell phone of Maryland's top education official, State Superintendent Mohammed Choudhury. And what Project Baltimore just learned about these deleted text messages, Andrzejewski says, is a big problem.
The superintendent should consider resigning his position.
On Monday, the State Board of Education issued this statement on its website concerning the text messages. The reason they're gone is because your superintendent's cell phone was set to automatically delete text messages after just 30 days.
It's all his text. It's not just your 98 text. It's every text. It's all the text that he's using to conduct state business.
We filed our initial public records request on April 10th. At that time, according to the metadata for the 98 text messages, 12 of them were not yet 30 days old. According to state law, as soon as we filed this public records request, at least these 12 messages should have been preserved. But they were not. They were deleted anyway. A problem that is addressed in this statement. Quote, the State Board recognizes that text messages cannot be deliberately deleted after they are requested as part of a Public Information Act request.
This needs to be investigated immediately as record concealment or destruction of the public record. So those records belong to the people.
Project Baltimore, a few weeks ago, received the metadata for these 98 text messages sent or received by the superintendent. We filed a public records request for them on April 10th because we believe they could further shed light on why the state changed how it reports test scores of low-performing schools, which made far less information about those schools available to taxpayers and parents. That decision was made after Fox 45 broke the story that 23 schools in Baltimore City had 0 students among those tested who scored proficient in math in 2022. In its statement, the Board of Education broke down Choudhury's text messages this way. 2 were to administrative employees. 3 were personal numbers. 4 were with the director of the Center for School Safety. 24 were with another public official's personal number, and 62 were told were spam.
The people in Maryland own those records. They paid for the creation of those records, and they need to be able to see those records.
According to Maryland law, every government agency, at least once every 2 years, must review its document retention policy, which guides public officials on what records should be preserved and for how long. But the State Department of Education's policy has not been updated since 2006. The last time MSDE's record retention policy was updated, 17 years ago, the iPhone had not yet been invented. This policy doesn't even mention text messages. As a result of Fox 45's reporting, the board said it will work with the state archives to determine how best to address text messages moving forward. But Andrzejewski said, it doesn't matter because the superintendent was using a taxpayer-funded cell phone to conduct taxpayer-funded business. He says those messages should not have been deleted.
He didn't want to turn over information about how he was making decisions on what student test scores to post in the worst performing schools. That the victims here are students trapped in those failing schools and their families.
Mr. Superintendent, have you ever used the Signal application in commission of your job?
This is Maryland State Superintendent of Schools, Mohammed Choudhury. at a recent state school board meeting.
Thank you much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
For my job? Well,
Signal is an encrypted messaging app which allows users to set a timer to automatically delete messages. The software, found in the App Store on most smartphones, is marketed as having privacy at its core.
you've never used Signal for your job? Thank you.
The state superintendent told us on the record, publicly, that he does not use the Signal app for his job. But these screenshots suggest otherwise. Project Baltimore obtained these screenshots of conversations between Choudhury and high-ranking employees within the Maryland State Department of Education. Each one is a Signal message sent by Mohammed Choudhury to at least one high-level MSDE employee whose name we are concealing. We received multiple text threads, which the source says were sent between late 2021 and 2022. Choudhury's name is right there, along with his picture. This phone number, which we blurred, is registered to the superintendent. In these messages, Choudhury certainly appears to be talking about work. Take a look at this screenshot. You can see Choudhury set the disappearing message timer to 1 hour, which applies to select messages. Choudhury writes, all of that teacher assignment stuff is too much. In this Signal message, Choudhury tells an employee a project needs a lot of work, saying, as of now, I'm not even close to greenlighting anything there. Here, Choudhury appears to berate his employee, saying, what feels like a waste of time is telling me last minute we are changing survey links when I told you I didn't want to do this. The employee responds, I don't understand what you see the issue to be. Choudhury replies, I'll make it easy for you guys. You're not changing it. It's staying as is. Don't meet with me today. Done. That's a directive. Employee, so cancel the Qualtrics license? Choudhury, yes, I don't give a about Qualtrics at this point. Qualtrics is a data analytics platform used by MSDE. That sounds like work. So why would the superintendent use an encrypted messaging app
As well as
that auto-deletes his conversations about work? If messages are sent through Signal, parents and taxpayers cannot see what's being said by their state superintendent about public schools. On August 3rd, Project Baltimore filed a public records request for Signal app data on the cell phone of Mohammed Choudhury. This is what we got back. MSDE replied, there are no documents or records responsive to your request. That's probably because, as far as we can tell, the Signal app is not on Choudhury's state-issued phone. This phone number is his personal number, meaning the state superintendent is using an app to encrypt and erase messages about state business on his personal cell phone.
So we followed up with Choudhury in an email, asking him to explain the screenshots and why he told us he never used Signal for his job. His answer has now changed.
In a statement, Choudhury said he used the encrypted messaging app with family and friends. He went on to say he used the app to communicate personal messages with one senior member of his team, adding, despite my repeated directives to not message me any official agency business-related matters through the Signal application, this individual continued to try to do so. But is that true? Take a look at this Signal message. You can see it says member SPCI under Choudhury's name. SPCI, according to our source, stands for Strategic Planning and Continuous Improvement, a group chat including at least 3 MSDE employees communicating through Signal. This is a thread from that group chat. You can see Choudhury initiates the conversation, even adding employees to the group. And this discussion is not personal. It's about Maryland Leads, a state grant program
that helps schools spend federal funds.
Mr. Superintendent, have you ever used the Signal application and commission of your job? I have no comment.
Thank you much. Appreciate it.
For my job? Well, you've never used Signal for your job?
Thank you.
The state superintendent's contract expires in June 2024. The State Board of Education, in just 2 weeks, will have to vote on whether or not to offer him a new contract. That vote has already been delayed for 2 months amid these serious concerns over transparency and allegations of a toxic workplace culture.
A shakeup tonight in the future of education in Maryland. Current Superintendent Mohammed Choudhury withdrawing his request for a second term, a move that comes after relentless investigation by our Project Baltimore team on transparency issues. Well, this announcement follows a series of Project Baltimore investigations that raised some serious questions over transparency within the Maryland State Department of Education. As Chris Papst explains, the state school board was set to vote at the end of September on whether to offer Choudhury another contract, but that vote had already been delayed twice in the wake of Project Baltimore findings.
Mr. Superintendent, have you ever used the Signal application and commission of your job? I have no comment.
Thank you much. Appreciate it.
For my job? Well,
Project Baltimore last week first showed you that video.
you've never used Signal for your job?
Thank you.
State Superintendent Mohammed Choudhury denying he used an encrypted messaging app for work. But we obtained screenshots showing he used the Signal app to communicate with high-level employees at the Maryland State Department of Education. The Signal app allows users to enable a setting to automatically delete messages. And some of the screenshots we obtained, like this one, appear to show Choudhury berating an employee, which supports allegations that the state superintendent created a toxic workplace culture. But this was not the first time Choudhury came under fire.
There cannot continue to be scandal after scandal after scandal.
Project Baltimore also reported how Choudhury used a secondary email account to conduct state business, and that his state-issued cell phone was set to auto-delete text messages after 30 days. 12 of Choudhury's text messages were deleted after Fox 45 filed a public records request to obtain them, a potential violation of state law.
And it's dishonest. It's hiding the ball. It's hiding the truth from parents.
I am revamping the template.
Our investigation into the state superintendent started months ago when we analyzed state test results and found 23 Baltimore City schools where 0 students among those tested scored proficient in math. Shortly after we reported those results, the Maryland State Department of Education took the test scores off its website, heavily redacted them, and then reposted them. A move that kept parents and taxpayers from seeing how poorly some schools are performing.
Mr. Choudhury.
That decision by MSDE sparked backlash. But when we tried to question Choudhury about it,
scores on the website,
he locked himself behind a door.
We're asking for the resignation of this individual, this state superintendent.
This week, in light of all of Project Baltimore's findings, 3 Republican lawmakers took a strong stance, calling on Choudhury to resign immediately.
This I pondered for months, taking this stand, but we need, because of our children.
I think the toxicity of his leadership and the fact that so many people are leaving the education system is a good indicator that he's not the right person for the job.
In the wake of Fox 45's findings, the Attorney General, State Prosecutor, and Inspector General for Education had all been called on by lawmakers and special interest groups to launch investigations into the superintendent's actions. And with time running out before the state board was set to make a decision, Governor Wes Moore, a Democrat, also came out strong this week when asked about Project Baltimore's reporting.
I want transparency, I want accountability, and I want a superintendent that believes in it and can deliver it.
Moore, who has repeatedly said he has no control over the state school board's decision to offer the superintendent another contract,
as well as
did have a strong opinion on Choudhury's performance.
The results we're seeing right now are not satisfactory results, and I demand better, and we need to make sure that we're getting better results for our kids.
Schools are not thriving.
All of this proved to be too much.
Sources within the State Department of Education told us the school board's support for Chaudhary deteriorated with each new Project Baltimore finding. The state superintendent agreed to resign and transition to a new role as senior advisor to the state school board. His $310,000 salary will stay the same until his contract expires in June 2024. Now, the state board will conduct a nationwide search for the next state superintendent of Maryland Public Schools.